Women just think that they're supposed to suffer. It's like, no, that is not true. Just because it's common, and like you said, men have been dominating science and research, et cetera, and left women out and not paying attention to them, but you're not supposed to suffer. Monthly periods are supposed to just come and go. It's just part of the reproductive life, but you're not supposed to suffer through it. You shouldn't have the mood swing. You shouldn't have the depression. You shouldn't have any of those things going on.
Hi, I'm Lynnis Woods-Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe. For those of you who are seeing me on my TikTok Live or on Instagram, or if you belong to my group of women on Facebook, you know that recently we've been talking a lot about hormones, but in particular, menopause and what it isn't, and all the different ways holistically that you can deal with some of the symptoms from menopause. But what if you can't do that? What if you tried everything and you're still having issues? It might be a good idea to begin to talk to someone like our guest today. I am so happy to have with us Dr. Jeffrey Brown. He is an osteopathic physician, specializes in working with women who have hormone imbalances. He loves to get to the root of the monthly pain. Instead of masking the symptoms, he focuses on hormones, inflammation, gut health, and lifestyle so that women can experience calmer, more magnetic cycles. And I certainly do understand that concept, Dr. Brown. Welcome to the Vibe Living Podcast. It's wonderful to have you here today.
It was wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I don't have very many men on this podcast. And the reason why I don't is that women feel that one of the reasons why women's health has not progressed the way it has in terms of really addressing the needs of females instead of treating for the symptoms and not causation is because it's been done by men and they haven't been through this experience. So therefore they don't know what it's all about. So tell us, why is it that you decided to go into this particular field of study?
That's a great question. Like, why would I do that? I guess I would say, one, I've always loved a challenge. I've always loved playing board games and cards, and I was an athlete. And so it's the competitive nature in me. I always like to see, okay, what can I accomplish? And it was the women in my practice that turned me on to bioidentical hormones. This was back in the day when Suzanne Summers was out on Oprah Winfrey. She had written a book on Dr. Phil talking about bioidentical hormones back in like 2007, 2008. And they were the one to ask me, can I look into this for them? Because it wasn't well known back then. I had never heard of hormones back then. And then when I looked into it, it was just mind-blowing. I said, wow, we never learned this stuff. This is such a shame. And then as I started implementing it and using it on my clients, and I saw the relief that they had, I saw them get their lives back, the impact that the hormones had on them. And then when I really started going deeper into women who were suffering from pain, and I've always, because I'm an osteopathic physician, we learned to use our hands to manual therapy, help with pain. And I've always had a passion for helping people eliminate pain. And this was an area that was truly underserved. Too many women suffer from pain. Too many women, it's ridiculous. And it's been normalized. And so that's what frustrated me. And I said, no, I'm going to make it a mission of mine to help women to overcome this. One, it was just a challenge. And two, just having a underserved population was just frustrating. I said, we can do much better than this. So I spent a lot of time and energy learning how to help women overcome this normalized condition, which is not normal. Yes, it's common, unfortunately, but it's not normal. And so that's where my passion starts, was just helping women get out of this.
You're absolutely right. And of course, a lot of women, because I've been doing this for 18 years, I talk to women all day long. I've had thousands of women that I've worked with over the last 18 years, through various modalities, through my courses and my coaching, my group programs and things like that. And one thing that is a constant is that they felt whenever they would go to the doctor and start talking about these symptoms they were having, they were either minimized or they would say, oh, it's just the aging process. And I have a lot of theories as to why that is, because I know that doctors' training in terms of hormones is not that in depth, even if they're a gynecologist. And I also know that when it comes to pulling panels and things of that nature, many of them don't even know how to read the panels and really don't like to go into that particular area because that's not their expertise. But things have changed just recently that's very exciting. And that is when they took the Black labeling off of the whole idea of HRT back in November of 2025. And so now I'm getting more and more questions about this whole hormone therapy. So let's start there. What is hormone therapy? What does it mean and how does it benefit women?
When you say hormone therapy, of course, that can mean different things to different people.
Yes.
When you said it blankly, so I'm like, okay, so in my world, I'm using BHRT, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, right? And that's a difference. In the conventional world, they're basically treating symptoms. A woman has hot flashes, can't sleep. So they say, I'm going to put you on this estrogen patch or this estrogen pill, maybe progestin. We're going to take care of your symptoms. My approach to looking at it is not about symptom control, it's basically reestablishing balance. Because when you reestablish balance, not only are your symptoms going to improve, but the quality of your life overall is going to improve and also decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease, memory loss, dementia, osteoporosis. There's so many benefits to maintaining hormone therapy. And so that's why I put it that way. So depending upon who you speak to, your conventional gynecologist or someone who's in a functional space or someone who's truly into balancing hormones, we're doing it more to this symptom management. That's what conventional medicine does anyway, for the most part. It's just kind of masking symptoms. What the patient came in for, we're going to find a pill to help you to deal with that particular problem, but not really get into the root cause and reestablish balance so that the body can flourish. And so BHRT helps your body flourish and be as healthy as possible. Mind, body, spirit. That's how I look at it.
Yes, because one of the things that's really important, I think probably more so than any other time of life for women, is extremely important that they take a look at their overall well-being from a mind, body, spirit perspective, because so much of what they're going through is going to be impacting their mind, their spirit, their emotions, which doesn't necessarily translate well in traditional Western medicine. That's why your approach is so refreshing. So when someone comes with you talking about that they're having brain fog and their tummy's upset and they're getting this belly fat and they're not sleeping well, what kinds of things do you tell them from your perspective in terms of what they need to be doing to come back into alignment with their hormones?
The first thing is a conversation. What I find with women, they do so much. And men, unfortunately, we can be very selfish and women can be too selfless. And so the stress component is huge. And so I speak a lot about, okay, what's going on in your life? Are you incorporating self-care? Because the cortisol, if it's elevated, is going to impact your hormones. It's going to impact your gut health. It's going to impact your emotions. So I always start there as far as asking those questions, because if we're not addressing that, it's going to be a hard battle as far as getting back in the balance, because stress always wins. Our body is going to defend itself. And so if it always feels like it's in fight or flight and it's defending itself, we're going to have a hard time getting to where we need to get to. So that's one of the first things we speak about is the stressors, any traumas, whether emotional, physical, whatever that is, has that been dealt with? Who are we working with to help that phase? Because that's not my area. So I have to make sure that they are taking care of that, because that will rear its ugly head if it hasn't already. That impacts those things. So that's first and foremost. And then, of course, then we have to look at testing. Now, during this phase, I prefer looking at saliva testing because you want to look at the levels that's inside the tissue. And so when we're doing that, I can measure the cortisol. I can see what your adrenal function looks at, and also the amount of free hormones that are there. And then we can put something together for you based on what we find. But lifestyle, your thought process, in addition to the hormones, that's how we're going to start. And once we go there, everything else should get much better.
And that is so true, because when you're out of alignment, the hormones definitely play a part in that, of course. But the other piece is all the different lifestyle things that are going on and the chronic stress that we have been under as women. But actually, the last few years have been stressful for everyone here in this country. So everybody, I feel, is chronically stressed. I feel that we really need like an emotional enema to get rid of some of the trauma that is sitting in our bodies right now as a result of the chronic stress and the constant wired but tired framework that we've been working out of. You mentioned lowering cortisol levels. What are some of the holistic ways, some of the ways that you recommend for women to naturally lower their cortisol?
That's a good question. As a Christian, I first, of course, say, okay, how much time are you spending in prayer? Are you doing devotionals? Are you doing those things where you're getting in touch with God? And if that's not your belief system, do you believe in a higher power anyway? So you spend time in prayer, meditation, deep breathing exercises, very important, gratitude journals, going for walks, spending time with pets, pamper yourself with a bubble bath. It's interesting how few people take bubble baths these days. It's like, I don't know. It's the last time I heard someone say, oh, yeah, I do take a bath. It's rare. It seems like now people are just showers. They're getting rid of the bathtub, showers. Everything is quick. And that's, we need to slow down. And so that's what I try to preach with them is, when do you slow down? Some people seem to be wired that they always have to do something. They feel guilty if they're actually relaxing. If something's wrong, they feel guilty if they are just relaxing, taking time for themselves. And so I encourage women to take time for yourself. Maybe go for a massage, get your nails done, get your hair done, whatever that is, but just to spend more time, maybe a yoga class, not always a high intensity, you got to go. So those are the things that we do. Now, of course, you can always take different supplements, magnesium and ashwagandha, different type of adrenal supplements. But I always tell people, I say, look, the free stuff is really where the bang is. It's not spending money, but we always place value on money. So if I want to sell supplements, people will buy that. But if I ask them, are you going for walks? Are you taking a bubble bath? Those are the things that people have a hard time doing or implementing. And I don't know it's because it's free. Spending time watching something that's funny. Funny videos, just laughter is so important to bringing up the endorphins and feel-good hormones. And how often do people spend time devoted to laughter? And so I try to get people to do the free stuff. I say, don't spend the money. Yes, certain times we have to help with the adrenals, but really focus on the free stuff, the laughter, enjoying intimacy, hugs, massage, those type of things that can really induce those feel-good hormones, the free stuff that God gave us that really truly can help our bodies get out of fight or flight. But too many of us are always looking for, okay, what pill can I take? Those are the things that people's mentalities are. I got to take something. It's like, no, I want you doing nothing. Go for a bath, walk, play with your pets. That's what you need to do, to spend more time in that, not what can you take. I'm trying to change that mentality.
You're so right about letting go of the guilt, because a lot of women feel guilty about taking time for themselves. But the way I explain it to a lot of my clients is that if you don't start placing yourself number one priority on the to-do list, then you're not going to be able to do all the other things you want to do for other people, because you're going to be totally burned out. And after burnout comes chronic stress, chronic disease, heart disease, a plethora of things that normally traditional medicine ties to other stuff. But the culprit many times is the breakdown of your body as a result of being under chronic stress. So I absolutely agree with you. Now, a lot of times women are finding around this stage of life that they're having problems sleeping. They're getting up sometimes 2 or 3 times a night. They never really get into a totally deep sleep. What are your suggestions around that piece? Because sleep is so important when it comes to the restoration of the cells and renewal.
Oh, yes, definitely. The first thing, we already spoke about it, right? So if cortisol is high, you're not going to sleep. And a lot of people who are wired, that fight or flight, they have the reverse cortisol curve. So normally or naturally, our body's supposed to wake up in the morning because cortisol is high. It goes down as the day goes on. But people who seem to be wired all the time, it's a reverse curve. So what's going to happen is their cortisol level is going to be high at night. So it's difficult for them to get to sleep because cortisol is high. So that's why one of the things we focus on is helping your body get out of fight or flight and lower cortisol. Now, there are some things we can do naturally as far as nutritional wise that can help bring down cortisol. But just you getting into the habit of making those changes, meditate, pray before bedtime is where that can help. Now, also, too, typically when women have a hard time sleeping, that's usually a signal to me that, your progesterone is probably low, which we know it is. If you're not supplementing with progesterone is something that helps your body relax, calm the nervous system down. It works on the GABA receptors of the brain so that you can calm down the anxiety. So if you're not on progesterone, especially during that time of a woman's life, you need to be on progesterone because that usually is a game changer. And then, of course, you have L-theanine, magnesium is so important for all the intracellular communication functions of the body. So magnesium is also very helpful to help to calm it down. But that cortisol is key. Say that's number one. And progesterone, of course, if you're in that perimenopause, menopause phase, you have to be on progesterone if you want to sleep.
And it's very interesting what you said about progesterone, because you're absolutely right. If the progesterone is low as a result of low estrogen, then you're not going to be sending those signals through the brain to create melatonin. But talking about the estrogen, you mentioned the lifestyle things. What if the lifestyle things are working somewhat, but they're still not getting a good night's sleep? You can tell from the symptoms they're telling you about that their estrogen levels are still elevated. What else would you recommend? What other kinds of things do you do for your patients when they come to you with that particular issue?
So if you're talking about estrogen dominance, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. That basically contributes to a lot of, the autoimmune disorders, the PCOS, the endometriosis, pretty much all those hormone imbalance issues are related to estrogen dominance, right? So then the question is, where is that coming from? And there's layers to that. The first, I shouldn't say first and foremost, but the first thing is the progesterone, right? We know progesterone helps police estrogen. So we have to have enough progesterone on board to help police and balance out the estrogen. But the other thing that's really important is working on our gut, in our gut health, because that's a big issue. Because in your gut, the microbiome has a community called the estrobolome. And the estrobolome is responsible for excreting estrogen and also the reabsorption of estrogen. So if we don't have proper gut health, then we're always going to have this issue with improper estrogen metabolism. And so I like doing comprehensive stool analysis so I can look at the gut microbiome. I can look at the beta-glucuronidase, which is an enzyme that impacts your body's ability to get rid of toxins and the reabsorption of estrogen. And we know that when that enzyme is high, your risk for breast cancer is much higher, as well as colon cancer. So doing a complete stool analysis, gut analysis is really important to look at that. And then the third thing we look at, again, is the toxins. Our chemical exposures, the toxin exposures, the microplastics, the nanoplastics that are found virtually everywhere. And so they get into our system and disrupt our hormones. And that can cause, again, the imbalance of our hormones, increasing the estrogen and progesterone imbalance. So detoxifying, getting rid of the plastics, that's a big one. I know a lot of people still buying plastic water bottles. Unfortunately, they're heating their foods, storing their foods in plastic. So you got to switch over to glass. We got to do what we can to get rid of those chemicals because they're impacting our hormone health. Even the clothes that you wear, a lot of the synthetics, the polyester, people not realize the spandex, those things contain the petroleum and then this excess treated chemicals on their clothes that now your body is reabsorbing, that is imitating and blocking and disrupting our hormone production. And so it sounds like a lot, unfortunately, it kind of is, but if you just take small little steps to slowly replace these things in your choices, your body will get better. Eventually, your body will be able to handle the onslaught if you give it and support what it needs. Those are the stages and steps that I do to kind of help the body to reestablish balance.
Another one that really makes a major difference in terms of your estrogen levels are the kinds of things you're putting on your body in terms of the lotions, the creams, the perfumes, the makeup, all of that. Many of them have estrogen blockers. The majority of them do, especially the ones that you get over the counter at the grocery store and things like that. There are some that I know, there are some cosmetic lines out there that are using all natural ingredients, but they're far and few in between. So I always tell women to beware about that. Maybe if you just have to wear makeup, maybe you only wear it when you know you're going somewhere, but you don't wear it around the house. You don't wear it to the grocery store. You let go a little bit of our vanity a little bit to have better outcomes in terms of our health. You mentioned something else that I wanted to go back to, and that was the bubble baths. I almost never recommend that. So you must have a particular brand or something that you recommend that women can take bubble baths with, because I'm always concerned about the agents that make it bubble and the colors they use and the fragrances that they use.
You're correctly right. And I think when I mention bubble baths, it's not so much the bubbles, the adding the magnesium to it, adding the lavender. You can use the essential oils. It's just really getting into something hot water to relax, play some music, throw some candles on. That's more of the lines that I'm thinking bubble bath. Not so much the bubble. I agree with you 100% when it comes to that.
It was more about stage of life, but the lady parts are very sensitive.
Sensitive, yes.
Can be right. I tell women one of the things you can do is you can get the magnesium flakes. Do not get the ones with the lavender already in it. Get the ones without the lavender, because the ones with the lavender means it's been brought through some kind of process.
Yeah.
Just get the magnesium flakes and then get your own therapeutic essential oils, hopefully from a great brand. I really do believe that sourcing is everything.
Yes.
And that is where your practitioner, Dr. Brown, comes in and getting those references. I do not necessarily believe just going out and buying supplements, at least until you've talked to your medical practitioner about what you might really need, instead of taking stuff and it doesn't get absorbed because the body doesn't need it and you just end up having very expensive urine. So instead, make sure you're consulting someone like Dr. Brown or Dr. Brown himself. Now, I know that you were talking over podcasts, and do you take consults over the internet? Are you virtual as well?
Yeah, I created a virtual program so I can focus on helping women all over. That was my mission. And so, yes, I did create a virtual program where we're helping women with chronic pelvic pain, endometriosis, adenomyosis, but also the transition of life too with the perimenopause, menopausal time of life. I do both, working in person and then also virtual. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I wanted to ask you about something else too. I see that you talk a lot about periods and PMS, which is a little bit outside of my demographic, but still relative for some of the women that are going through this. But in particular, when it comes to perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, what are some of the myths that are out there that women you think are still believing because they just haven't been educated as to why those myths aren't true?
The first one is what you mentioned earlier about that, the black box label coming off. People still believe that estrogen causes cancer. I probably hear that maybe once a week, that people still have these thoughts because it's hard to unlearn, especially the negative things. That just stays in people's heads. And so that's one that I have to re-educate. I can send you studies if you want, but people are not going to read the studies, but I'm telling them, no, that's a myth that's been out there for a while, unfortunately, just because of misinterpretation of studies. So that's the first ones. The second one is that these painful periods and certain disorders, they can't be fixed. Some people just think that's just because it's normal. That's just how it is. That's how it's supposed to be. That to me is probably the biggest myth that's out there, is that women are supposed to suffer. Women just think that they're supposed to suffer. And it's just not, I don't know what to say. I was like, no, that is not true. Just because it's common. And like you said, men have been dominating science and research, et cetera, and left women out and not paying attention to them. But you're not supposed to suffer. Monthly periods are supposed to just come and go. It's just part of the reproductive life, but you're not supposed to suffer through it. You shouldn't have the mood swing. You shouldn't have the depression. You shouldn't have any of those things going on. So that's another myth, because if you poll most women, they'll believe, yeah, this is normal, right? Because it's part of their family, they know friends, it's part of society. So those are top two things. No, hormones, bioidentical hormones, balancing hormones does not cause cancer. And two, women are not supposed to suffer. Those are the two biggest myths that I would say that are still out there.
I have a philosophy about the suffering piece. We are the bearer of life. We carry children.
Yes.
And during periods of carrying the children, it can sometimes be uncomfortable or painful. And having a child is extremely painful. Whether you decide to have a saddle block or not, which I have 4 children, I have them all naturally. I was very blessed to be able to do that. I know some people, the pain tolerance is too much, but a lot of people associate that pain with, okay, that's just the way it's going to be. My childbirth was painful. My periods are painful. And this menopause is going to be painful. And it's just a part of in this case, part of the aging process. But I am a very strong advocate of saying that when you're going through the transition and going through whatever you're going through with your hormones and everything else, it is just a part of the cycle of life. It's part of your transition. It doesn't mean that you're sick. It doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that you're unhealthy. It just means that your body is recalibrating and getting yourself ready for this next stage of life. And actually, for me, I turned 69 last week. And I still have I still have some of the symptoms. That's the other thing. That's another myth. I'll add one to you, that I hear so many women say, oh, I'm through with menopause because I don't have them anymore. I had menopause from this time to this time. And I want to say, honey, let me explain the cycle of menopause to you. Okay. You have your perimenopause. And then once you have 365 days of no period, that next day is when you're in menopause, that one day. the next day you're menopausal for the rest of your life. And the thing that I'm concerned about is that women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s aren't even being talked to about the possibility of bioidentical hormone treatment or any of that at all, because they're thinking it's not menopause, but no. I started doing bioidentical when I was 66 because I was getting yeast infections.
Yep.
Lack of vaginal estrogen. Yes, I was getting yeast infections. Up to that point, I had symptoms, but I just thugged it out. But you can't thug out a yeast infection, I'm telling you. And I knew enough, at least, and I'm not a lay person, so I knew enough to know that something was going on with me hormonally. But a lot of women don't know that. And they just keep going back to treat the symptom, keep putting in suppositories to kill the candida temporarily or whatever it is. And sometimes it doesn't even come from the candida. It feels like a yeast infection, but sometimes it's something else, a chemical imbalance because your vaginal estrogen is going down. Or the women who get UTIs. Talk about that a little bit. I'll be back with our special guest, Dr. Jeffrey Brown, right after this message from our sponsors. What if menopause didn't have to feel like a battle, but a transition you actually feel good in? Introducing VitaFem, a plant-based alternative designed to support your body naturally without synthetic hormones. If you've been feeling off, dealing with night sweats, anxiety, brain fog, frozen shoulder, low energy, mood shifts, or restless nights, VitaFem works with your body to help restore balance so you can feel like yourself again. No harsh chemicals, no synthetic HRT, just powerful plant-based support that helps you feel vibrant, steady, and in control. Ready to experience menopause differently? Discover how VitaFem can support your next chapter naturally.
Yep, I was just about to say that because you mentioned the vaginal yeast. And people don't realize the chronic UTIs and estrogen, how it's important to maintain homeostasis with the bacteria. Like I said earlier, the gut microbiome, that bacteria speaks to the bacteria all over your body. We're basically all organisms, trillions of organisms. And estrogen plays a role in keeping everything in place. The vaginal walls, the moisture, that bacteria in the vaginal flora is key, and estrogen plays a huge role in that. And so when estrogen declines, then the bacteria changes, and then that can make you more susceptible to UTIs. And it's funny, in the conventional world, they just want to keep women on antibiotics. And most people don't think about, they could be low in estrogen that could actually fix this problem. But it's not just the UTIs. People don't realize it's like, let's say dementia, for instance. There's a lot of studies that talk about elevated FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, that creates inflammation. It secretes inflammatory proteins. It increases your risk for dementia, Alzheimer's. And what lowers FSH, of course, is estrogen, right? And that's why it's high, because estrogen is not there. So if you want to prevent dementia, if you want to improve memory, if you want to improve learning, you want to maintain optimal levels of estrogen. But that's not talked about. It's just easier to say, a pill, you're just getting older. That's part of the process, but not maintaining your hormones. And what about the arthritis pain, the joint pains that people all of a sudden start to develop? That's lack of hormones, right? That's testosterone, that's estrogen. People don't think about that.
What about osteoporosis, which is another thing that women deal with? I had a situation where a client of mine, before she became my client, she had fibroids and they were very painful. So the doctors, when she was in her 40s, maybe early 50s, gave her a shot and told her, now, we can only do this one time, but it should work and you won't have any pain. But later on, you might have a propensity to have a low bone density. Okay. Now, she said back then she didn't care. She was in so much pain, whatever. I'll deal with that later, right? Tomorrow. And of course, now this is where things get interesting. One would think that when a doctor's telling you that, then they're going to follow up a little bit earlier than they would for bone density tests and things like that, because they have knowledge of what it could do. But that's not how our managed care system works. No. The managed care system tells many women, most of them say, you don't need bone density till 65. She could have really benefited from having bone density maybe at 55 or whatever. Yeah. But the bottom line is she ends up going for a walk one day. There's a raised pavement. She tripped, she fell, and she broke her kneecap. Oh. And painful, had to have surgery and all that. And she started thinking about it because at that time she was only 64, not 65. And she said, my bone density test is coming up. She said, I'm going to see if I can get it scheduled earlier, even though I'm only 64. They scheduled it and the results came back. Guess what? She has severe osteoporosis.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, it is sad because it could have been prevented several ways. And this
Oh,
is
yeah.
where the advocacy comes in terms of patients advocating for themselves. What kinds of things do women need to be asking their doctors? What kinds of prompting do they need to do to get the kind of treatment that they know that they probably need?
That's a great question. And unfortunately, my answer is not going to be very positive. It goes right because it goes back to what we spoke about earlier. When it comes to the hormones, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to these types of things, most physicians, all of us really don't have much education when you come out of medical school and residency training. So you don't have that. So you have to find people who've had additional training when it comes to truly helping the body heal from the root cause. So you can ask the questions all you like. So women say, they ask them for, can you get a hormone panel, hormone testing? But then my follow-up question is, okay, let's say they order it. Who's interpreting it for you? Are you interpreting it or are they interpreting it? Because if you have to ask for it, that means they don't really know what they're doing with it anyway. They should be automatically.
They would have suggested they would lead with that anyway.
They would have. So when you ask that question to me, I'm like, fortunately, maybe they can ask for bone density tests earlier if their insurance will pay for it. If they're not going to pay for it, are you willing to pay for it out of pocket? Right. And so that comes to another conversation based on our system as far as when they will actually pay for tests or not. And then if you do get that test done, are you with a provider that's going to provide you with hormone therapy? Or they just want to put you on Boniva, Fosamax, some of these other drugs that are out there that I don't prescribe them. But that's basically what they're going to get. They're not going to get the education to how can you help your body get stronger, those bones get stronger, reduce pain. What can you buy? What can you give them naturally? That's where the problem is, right? Not the right minerals, not the progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. Those are ways to help build your bones stronger, keep them strong, the right minerals. And so that's what a disconnect is. We are trained to treat disease with medications or surgery. We're not trained to help the body heal holistically. So that's where the frustration is. So when you ask the question, like they can ask the questions, but I don't really know what the answers are going to be. And it's not going to be probably the answer that I would give, a patient if they're seeing their regular PCP or gynecologist.
That's a very honest answer. And I would say if you're on a game show, right answer. There is no good question. It's only because of the way that they were trained. It helps to know. When I found out that I was having this yeast infection, I kind of knew what it was. I said, okay. So I went back to my doctor, and this was through my managed care system. And I said, okay, I need you for right now. I need to get some estrogen in my system. So I need you to get me a patch or something, just to waylay this and maybe some progesterone to go with that. And she says, okay, before you're 66. And I said, no, I'm in good health. Cancer doesn't run in my family. That's not even an issue. I know what I'm talking about. I just need you to write the prescription for right now until I can get with my holistic doctor. And she was like, oh, okay. She'd probably think, good. Save me 20 minutes of the speech that they give everyone to discourage them from whatever. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, if I didn't know this, I would be walking out with a suppository thing for yeast infections, and it'll work for a while, and then it's going to come back in 2 months or whatever. And that's what really opened my eyes. And I had already been certified about hormones and the study of hormones and all that kind of stuff, but I wanted to dig even deeper and partnered with a holistic doctor, much like yourself, to create a product that is dealing with HRT from a plants, seeds, and adaptogen type of approach. And one of the main contents in this formula is ashwagandha, which is hugely important in terms of cortisol. But I want to talk about something else real quickly around the cortisol levels. Cortisol, of course, gathers. One of the ways we know we have a lot of cortisol, perhaps, is if you have that little pouch, muffin top, or whatever you want to call it, big belly, whatever you want to call it, you have that. And of course, women try everything to try to get rid of it. And of course, it doesn't really work because it's not that fat. Could you explain the kind of fat that results as a result of high cortisol around our tummies?
So if you think about it in times of war, that's how I like to put it out there. Your body is going to do what it can to conserve. It's not in a state where you're going to burn, right? Because when you are in that state of fight or flight, your body has limited resources. And so those resources are going to go towards the areas that are very important. And if, like when women go on these starvation diets, it's like, and they're not losing any weight, it's like your body's already in conservation mode. You're just making it worse. You're creating more stress on the body and making you think, okay, we don't have anything coming, so we need to store this fat because we got to be able to use this later. And so when you have cortisol going on, you're also going to have insulin and blood sugar going up, and then insulin is going to store fat. So you're just going to have this vicious cycle here. And this is why I said earlier, it's not so much about doing things, it's about not doing. It's the relaxation. Let your body feel at ease. So when you feel at ease, then your body can say, okay, now that we can burn, we can build, we can repair. And so if your body's always in that fight or flight mode, it's just going to keep storing that fat because that's where your body gets the energy from. And that's what they don't realize. You get more energy from fat. And so your body's going to want to save that and hold on to it until it feels like it's in a safe environment. So if you're not in a safe environment, your body's going to say no. And unfortunately, cortisol is the only hormone that goes up as we age, right? All the other hormones, they're going down, but not cortisol, because that is designed to help defend our bodies, right? That's what it's there for. So cortisol is very important, but we have to realize that in this world that we live in, this microwave and society and just the high stress environment that we live in, cortisol is going to just stay up there. So we really have to work diligently to be conscious of it and take action to help our bodies to feel more at ease. So that's the issue. It's storing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for all the information that you share. Everyone who's listening, I know you're going to want to talk to Dr. Brown further. And the good news is he does have a virtual practice. So please go ahead and take a look at the show page with all of his contact information that is there. He is ready and prepared to help you solve your issues around what's going on with your hormones, especially when you get to that postmenopausal stage where things are still going crazy. You thought you were through with it. Dr. Brown, thank you so much for being on the V.I.B.E. Living podcast. It's been wonderful having you here today.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you to all of you for listening. Don't forget to please comment, like, and subscribe to the podcast and share it. Sharing is caring, everybody. I have to tell you that. And the goal of this podcast is to help women to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered as they embrace the aging process holistically for their mind, body, and spirit. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Have a fantastic day. And don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the V.I.B.E. Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.